In the play-in, the Golden State Warriors would face off against the Sacramento Kings. This game would be a game in which the storied and battle-tested Warriors would lose to the Sacramento Kings in a disappointing fashion, 118-94. There were a ton of notable things that happened this game. The Warriors were sloppy, giving away 16 turnovers. The sophomore Keegan Murray was hot, scoring 14 points in the first quarter, then finishing with 8 triples for 32 points. And then there was Klay Thompson. Klay, who was one of the greatest shooters that the game has ever seen, somebody who has shot 41.3% from 3 on 7.6 attempts per game for his career, had one of his worst performances of the year, going 0 of 6 from deep and 0 of 10 from the field. This performance by Klay would sum up what has been an incredibly frustrating and unpredictable season for him. With Klay averaging 17.9 points, shooting 43.2% from the field and 38.7% from 3, his numbers would fail to tell us how much that he's actually had to overcome this season. At one point this season, Klay was struggling bad enough to where Kerr, who believes in his guys to a fault, thought that it was the move to bench a Klay who hadn't came off of the bench since his rookie season. For reference, Klay was drafted in 2011. Klay not having to come off of the bench since his rookie season would only make this benching harder to digest for him, which isn't surprising in the least. Almost no former star wants to have to move to the bench. A lot of talented players don't want to accept coming off of the bench like Ginobili did. For a lot of these guys, moving to the bench is a death sentence.
How do you feel about starting at the 4, or the concept of starting at the 4, or even coming off of the bench? And the second question is...
Who, me?
Oh. I guess that answers that part.
I mean, I don't know where that started, where that came from. Hey, P, they said I got to come off the bench.
So upon getting benched, what does Klay Thompson do? He goes on to yell at his head coach Steve Kerr, only to later apologize to him and be at peace with the situation. I'll give it to Klay, that's some serious growth that he showed in a short period of time. But regardless, Klay yelling at his coach for getting benched was pretty crazy, right? Well, check it out, the entire situation gets a lot crazier. Klay's first game, off of the bench, he goes off and he drops a season-high 35 points against the Utah Jazz. We fast forward and a month later, Klay Thompson would find himself permanently back in the starting lineup, replacing Warriors first-round draft pick Brandon Podziemski, the guy who had initially taken his spot in the first place. With Klay returning to the starting lineup to close the season, Klay Thompson would of course look like Klay Thompson, which was great news for the Golden State Warriors. In Klay's final 10 games to close the regular season, he would average 21.8 points, shooting 49.1% from the field and 41.6% from 3. With Klay on a heater, the Warriors would finish this regular season hot, winning 8 of their last 10 games. And then, that 0 of 10 stinker and play-in letdown happened, abruptly ending the Warriors season. With the Warriors season abruptly coming to an end, everybody would be wondering what would be next for Klay Thompson and this squad, as both of these parties would have some very tough decisions to make this offseason. So let's go over what Steve Kerr, Steph, and Draymond had to say about Klay Thompson's upcoming free agency. Let's start with Steve. If Steve Kerr got his way, Klay Thompson wouldn't be going anywhere. Here's what he had to say about Klay Thompson entering unrestricted free agency after the Warriors L. Quote, "We need Klay back. He's still got good years left. And I know that I speak for everybody in the organization when I say that we want him back. What Klay has meant to this franchise, and as good as he still is, we desperately want him back." End quote. Steph would also make it known that he doesn't want his Splash brother to go anywhere, saying that he can't ever see himself without Draymond and Klay by his side. Now, at the same time, when Steph was asked, "Are big changes needed?" he would say that he just wants to win. Which brings me to the question, what does winning look like for this Warriors team? Because one thing is clear about this team to me, and that's the fact that it needs to make some serious changes. If you were the Warriors, would you shake up this core or just everybody around it? While this core still has plenty of gas left in the tank, at their age, it's hard to ignore their shortcomings. Dray, while he's been nothing but impactful when he's on the floor, as of late, he's let distractions overshadow his true impact. To name a few, there was that Poole punch, which played a part in Poole being traded for an aging CP3, and then there was that whole Nurkic debacle that took 12 games of his talent away from the Warriors in a tight Western Conference. When you're trying to be one of the best teams in the league, these are things that any player can't do, let alone your stars. If Dray doesn't miss 12 games, then who knows, maybe the Warriors aren't even in the play-in tournament. The Warriors went 13-14 without Draymond this season. That tells you how valuable that he is right there. The Warriors just needed 4 more wins to have a better record than the Phoenix Suns, who avoided the play-in tournament by being the 6th seed. Now, just because the Warriors could possibly benefit from shaking up their core, that doesn't mean that Klay Thompson is washed or even close to it. As evidenced by Klay's last 10 games, he's still a baller, but at the same time, he can no longer be paid like or be the second option on a championship squad, which honestly isn't the worst thing if you're the Warriors, because the Warriors have a ton of options at their guard position. They just drafted Pod's 19th overall, and he has been very promising all year. And then there's Moody, who has continued to perform when given opportunity despite being in Steve Kerr's doghouse. After going down against the Kings in the play-in, Moody would score 16 points in just 15 minutes. Warriors GM Mike Dunleavy Jr. has taken note of Moody's potential and would say this following their L. He probably hasn't played as much as we'd like, so that'll be something that we'll look at. I think it's really important coming into year 4 for him that there is some reasonable playing time available. Dunleavy's comments here make it sound like the Warriors might be on the verge of protecting Steve Kerr from himself. Warrior fans, it would suck to lose an all-timer like Klay, but at least if you did, you have options. So while Klay does understand where his own limitations lie and isn't expecting a groundbreaking contract according to this report, he still is somebody that is expecting to be taken care of if he ultimately decides that he wants to return to Golden State. To quote Kendra Andrews, the important thing for Klay is that he feels appreciated by the organization. He wants them to come to him and say that we're going to take care of you. End quote. I see where Klay is coming from, wanting to get taken care of by the team that he won 4 championships with. But the question for Klay is, what does getting taken care of look like? This man got a 5-year, $190 million deal after he tore his ACL in 2019. Giving him that contract was a great gesture by the Warriors franchise. Again, it's safe to say that Klay isn't expecting anything like that this time around, but at the same time, at least according to Shams, he turned down the 2-year, $48 million deal before the season started, which sounded to me like a completely fair contract for the guy, all things considered. Now, while I'm not at all opposed to the Warriors giving Klay a legacy contract and continuing to squeeze as much as they can out of the core that got them 4 championships, there's a chance that this man might just find more inner peace elsewhere at this stage of his career.
Yes, I want to re-sign with the Dubs, but I also have to prioritize my mental health and lay out what is important to me at this point in my career.
I think that Klay realizes that he could still be a very valuable player to the Warriors, but at the same time, he also realizes that he might be more valuable elsewhere. And this is probably why we are seeing Shams report that Klay Thompson is very open to seeing his market in free agency, which there will 100% be a market. Reportedly, the Magic are a team to look out for, and so are the Dallas Mavericks. While I think that Klay joining either of these teams makes sense, I am more enamored by him potentially joining the Dallas Mavericks because of how ballistic their offense would be. Right now, the Mavericks' 3rd leading scorer is Tim Hardaway Jr. This guy is averaging 14.4 points a game, shooting 40.2% from the field and 35.3% from 3. Klay, in even one of his worst years, has better numbers, averaging 17.9 points on 43.2% from the field and 38.7% from 3. And Klay isn't playing next to Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Now, while I love the idea of Klay in Dallas offensively, because of the Mavericks cap situation, just to get to Dallas, he would have to come on a super bargain, which is not something that I really see happening, at least not for the Mavericks. Logistics aside though, Dallas is currently my favorite Klay destination, but who cares what I want, right? If Klay Thompson's dad and former Laker Michael Thompson were to get his wish, Klay would be playing next season in Los Angeles, and he's not exactly shy about that either.
Yo, bring Klay to the Lakers, man.
Yeah, hold that one.
Bring Klay to the Lakers.
Yeah, I'd love to see that happen. Yeah.
You know you want to go out there.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, Michael Thompson.
Lakers fans, how would you feel about Klay Thompson potentially joining Anthony Davis and LeBron James in Los Angeles? For me, it still blows my mind that these scenarios that I've ripped off can even be a possibility. It's just hard to imagine a world where Steph, Klay, and Draymond Green aren't together. It broke my heart seeing Klay leave the floor as he took everything in around him. To me, this was Klay realizing that he may have just played his last game with this Warrior squad, which, as I've said countless times, is just something that feels impossible to digest. Guys, if you were the Warriors, what kind of contract would you feel comfortable offering Klay Thompson? And if you were Klay Thompson, are you even looking to return to Golden State, especially if that money is right elsewhere? Again, guys, let me know what you think of everything down in the comments below. Clicking the video on the screen right now is a great way to support my channel. I'm GetLikeCoop, bringing you guys the scoop until our next upload.